Hello, CCF family. Worship has always been a huge part of our community during our 40 years of existence. So Pastor David asked me the other day to put together a short video on the purpose of worship. So here it is, the purpose of worship in 45 seconds. And go. How do I even do that? How do I sum up something of such eternal significance? Do you ever get articles or emails that promise you to show you a better way in 5 easy steps? Like, if your goal is to be a happier person, say goodbye to these 3 behaviors. Or 6 tiny habits that will make you more elite than 98% of people. Well, perhaps you can unlock the door to self-improvement with just a few easy steps. But the journey to self-abandonment in worship is where depth resides. Self-abandonment, that doesn't sound fun. And it really isn't until we're truly and completely besieged by the sheer glory and beauty and reality and vastness of the living God. See, when I look at Scripture, I see worship take place when people were utterly overwhelmed by the magnitude of this God and His goodness. Just think, for example, of Isaiah's vision of the temple and with the strange angelic creatures and all the smoke in Isaiah 6. Or remember Moses at the burning bush. What an encounter that was. We can think of Peter, James, and John on the mountain seeing Jesus being transfigured right in front of them in Matthew 17. Or envision one of my favorite scenes in Matthew 8 where the leper comes to Jesus for a moment seemingly unmoved by his impending death, and he surrenders all, falls prostrate before the presence of this Jewish rabbi in an act of worship. We can also recall the powerful moment in 2 Chronicles 7 when Solomon is dedicating the temple and the priests couldn't even stand on their own 2 feet because of the weighty presence of God. They're all completely overwhelmed. John in the book of Revelation, right in the beginning in chapter 1 verse 17, he says, "When I saw him, I fell at his feet dead." Dead. If that's not self-abandonment, then I don't know what is. But could it be that this sort of self-abandonment is the key to truly experiencing God's presence in worship? Could it be that a relinquishing of self-absorption is a prerequisite to being immersed in God's eternal presence? Could it be that this kind of surrender is actually a lot of fun and tremendously life-giving? Perhaps when Moses took off his shoes at the burning bush, he also took off his vanity. And all of that ultimately led to the Exodus. John's encounter in the first chapter of the book of Revelation doesn't end with his unresponsiveness at the sight of Jesus. In fact, John says, "When I saw him, I fell at his feet as though dead. But he laid his right hand on me." See, in worship, Jesus comes so close to touch us, and we can touch him. He draws near to us intimately. And he says, "Fear not." In a place of worship, when we realize his greatness and surrender to it, that's the declaration of heaven to us. Jesus says, "I'm the first and I'm the last. I'm the living one." See, Christianity isn't just a nice philosophical idea, but built on a living God. "I died," Jesus says, "but behold, look at me." That's what worship is. Look at me. See, perceive that I'm alive forevermore. That's the eternal perspective communicated in a place of worship to our weary hearts that are often captivated by the chaos within us and around us. Jesus says, "I have the keys of death and Hades." Our greatest enemies are defeated, and we're fueled by Jesus' victory in a place of worship. And then Jesus says to John, "John, write these things down." Do you see what happens? Worship took John from a paralysis to purpose, from blindness to a 20/20 vision, from temporality to an eternal and victorious outlook, all because he abandoned himself, gave himself to Jesus, acknowledged him, and let him lead. Worship is always elevated to another level when we realize the immensity of God and at the same time the intimate relationship he longs to have with us. Worship celebrates communion with God. That's why it's still such a big deal to us as Community Christian Fellowship. Countless people in the history of this church have grown to understand the weight of God's presence and the value of its pursuit. So let's continue to look at him in abandonment and adoration.